Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Charmed Life podcast and YouTube channel. I am your host, Tricia Carr. This podcast is all about the unconditional love of the universe, mysticism, metaphysics, spirituality, and, raising your consciousness. We get into a lot of things here on this podcast and YouTube channel. And so you can find it as a podcast on any of your outlets or on the YouTube. And so I'd love to invite you to subscribe, like, share, comment, and make suggestions. That would be amazing. Also on the podcast, if you could review it, that would be awesome. If it's your first time, welcome. I am a spiritual teacher, an intuitive channel, animal communicator, a lot of those things in those metaphysical streets. And I have this wonderful episode that I'm very excited to present to you guys. It's my very sweet friend, Joe Perreta. He is a medium and really talented astrologer as well. And this is actually going to be a two-parter because we just couldn't stop chit-chatting with one another and just like getting into it. Joe is so wise and kind of especially for his youth, but not really because, the youth now these days are coming in with all of that powerful cosmic consciousness energy. And Joe is just one of the most lovely souls that I've met in the last 5 years. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like I said, this will be part 1. And stay tuned. I will publish part 2 really soon. And so everyone, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Joe Perreta. I'll see you on the other side. Joe, I'm so excited. It's so awesome to be able to connect with you on the podcast because you're just so amazing. And we kind of fell in love real hard when we met each other.
We did. We really did. You're so amazing too. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I miss you. Like we haven't been,
I know.
again, we've only met twice in person.
I think
And
so. Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 times over like Zoom or something like that. And it's like, well, it was like we picked up from some other.
Yeah, another lifetime. Definitely. Definitely. No,
All
it
right.
was so funny too because when the first time we met was over like Zoom or
Mhm.
I don't know, FaceTime or something.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I was living with my best friend at the time, and she was like, "Oh, how did it go?" And I was like, I really loved Tricia. Like, she was great. And she was like, was she the one that was, because I had my bedroom doors were like sliding doors, so you really could hear everything.
Uh-huh.
And she heard you talking, and she was like, "Is she the one who said blah 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 blah?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was her." And she was like, "Oh my god, I loved her too."
Oh.
It was so funny. And she was like, "She just has such like a nice voice," and my friend's very intuitive, so I was like, "All right, I knew it. Like I knew I liked her for a reason. Like you just have such good energy. Anyone who can like see that just knows you're a good person. I will
Hmm.
go on record saying that for sure."
I got chills. Actually, that is a huge compliment to me, saying that I have a nice voice, because I actually feel like it's just whatever, but I use my voice so much, yeah,
Hmm.
obviously for this and other things and leading
Right.
meditations and hypnosis and stuff. So tell her thank you so much, and I love
I
her too.
will. Well, she'll probably watch this, so thanks, Anna.
What's her name?
Anna.
Anna or Hannah?
Yeah. Anna.
Anna.
A-N-N-A.
Hi,
Yeah.
Anna. We love you.
We love you, Anna.
Okay, well, okay. Where do we start? I think let's let people know about your journey, your work. I know some of it, we've gotten to connect on some of it. You are a medium and you're working so much and you're serving so much, and we are so aligned in heart. We're so aligned
Very
in a
much
lot
so.
of our in our ethics too, which I think is really cool. I think we could talk about that as well because
Mhm.
that's probably in my observation of the work that we're doing now today, it's something that is a bit more, I don't know if I want to say the word modern, a little bit
Mhm.
antiquated. Things were just seen a little bit differently so far as connecting with spirit and how we utilize our psychic abilities, that somehow we don't have control, no free will, all that kind of stuff. We'll,
Right.
we'll put that as a secondary thing. So first, let everyone know about you, your journey,
So,
your work, whatever you want to talk about.
sure. So, I'm Joe, obviously.
Yeah.
So I started doing this work. I'm 31 now, so I started doing it when it's like 24 was when I officially like, I don't know if it came out again, I guess
Mhm.
you could say. Um, but I had always had experiences as a kid, like so many other mediums and psychic people, intuitive people. Um, I grew up, just having dreams about things that would happen, days later, or I actually dreamt about 9/11. That was like the first big event in my life.
Oh my God.
I dreamt about it. it was like Saturday and Sunday maybe, or like Friday night and Saturday night, and then it happened the following Tuesday, and it was a very, very specific dream of the shadow of a plane like crashing into the shadow of a building, and there was like a calendar in the sky, and it landed on Tuesday, and I remember being like, what the hell is, like, next week starts on Monday, not Tuesday, and then Tuesday rolled around and everything happened, and I was just like, holy shit, like, but I was 11, you know, I was a kid, so I really wasn't afraid of the ability, but I just didn't know what to make of it. I was like, oh my God, like, what am I part of? Like, what the hell is this? Like, there was this sense of like,
it's always like, what am I supposed to do with that information?
right, and like, thanks for giving it to me, but like, what the, like, it happened anyway.
Yeah.
So like, what am I supposed to do? So, you know, that was like kind of my first experience where I maybe told people, because I had told people before it happened, but even when I was younger, you know, my grandmother, both my grandparents, my mom's parents, I was very close to, and they passed 8 months apart actually in 1996 or 1990, I think it was 1995. So I was really young. I was like 6 and 7 when they passed, and after my grandmother passed, before my grandfather, I woke up one night crying for my grandmother because we had watched a movie. Oddly enough, it was a movie about, it was called, I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but it's called House of Spirits with Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons and Winona Ryder, Antonio Banderas. No, it's not the greatest movie ever, but I love it. Honestly, I love it. Tell me
the name of it again?
House of Spirits, it's called.
It's based on named Tricia.
No, for real.
Meryl Streep. Oh,
right. She's my favorite. Oh my God. But it's based on a book. I think the book might be called the same thing. I actually never read the book, but the woman in it was always seeing spirits, Meryl Streep's character, and she was very, in the book they call her Clara the Clairvoyant, and she reminded me of my grandmother in the movie, because my grandmother was very witchy, which I will get to in a second. So I woke up crying for her that night after we had watched the movie, and I remember I like looked up from my mom's shoulder, because I was crying on my mother's shoulder. I was like 5, 6, whatever. And I looked up, and on like the back of the chair, my grandmother was just sitting there, and it was like she was like made of light, but she wasn't like shining. It was like I can't even explain it. She was just like luminous, like in this very like soft kind of way. And I looked at her, and she just like kind of turned and looked at me, and she was like really like her legs were crossed and her hands were on them, like she always used to sit like very like almost regal. My grandmother, she was a Scorpio, so she was very like within, you know. And she just kind of looked at me, and I was like, okay, I know she's fine, but like, why is she here? You know what I mean? I was like kind of scared. Yeah. So I got afraid. I looked down and I looked back up, and she was gone. And from that moment, that was really the first experience I truly remember with the spirit world, where I was like, oh, like they don't really go that far at all. Like I needed my grandmother, and she was right there.
Oh.
But you know, it's funny, that didn't happen a lot to me. That happened one time, and then I was kind of like, okay. And then I would have other little things happen, you know, like stuff that I get now, like little signs or birds, you know, all those kind of common things that people get. But it really, you know, the 9/11 thing happened when I was 11, and then I kind of got afraid of it because I was 11, 12, you know, 13 years old, and I was having dreams about people, and then they would die like days later, or I remember it got to the point where I stopped dreaming, and I was actually seeing things like in my like waking state. Like I remember one night I was sitting on my computer, because my computer back in the day was like a big, obviously giant, like, you know, like I don't even remember, like a Dell or something. And it was in my parents' bedroom. We didn't have like a computer room, and you know, it was when computers like first like a thing. So it was just like in my parents' bedroom, and we had like dial-up internet. So I was on the computer, my mom was watching TV, and I had my headphones in so like I wouldn't disturb her. And all of a sudden, I will never forget it, I was just like sitting there reading something. And like kind of like level with my eyes, I saw like this brown rug and a panel wall, and like 2 or 3 men walked by with dress shoes and dress pants on, and like, you know, like they were like dressed up in suits, and just like kind of walked past me, and I was like, Ma, I was like, I just saw like, you know, what I just described to you. And she was like, what that? You know, my mother was very open to it because my mom had psychic experiences, and her mom, the one that I saw when I was little after she passed, she used to read playing cards, and she was a very witchy Italian family. I'm definitely not the first one to have this ability at all, and I'm definitely not the last one either. There's like little kids in my family who are creepy too, but that's not creepy, but you know what I mean, spooky. The whole other conversation. So she was like, I don't know, Joe, maybe, you know, something's gonna happen. she even said to me, I'm pretty sure my mother even said to me, like, you know, it kind of sounds like a funeral home with the panel walls and the brown rug. And I was like, oh, you know, whatever. And I had never really been to a funeral home. I mean, what funeral had I gone to at 11 years old, 12 years old? And the next day, my mother's friend from work, her father passed away. And it was someone who I knew since I was a kid. And I was like, well, maybe, you know, it's weird. But my logical mind, like I've always had a very logical, scientific sort of like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence. So I was like, I don't know. And then it happened again, like maybe a month or so later. I was getting out of the shower and I had my towel on. I was again like 12 years old. And I looked in the mirror to, like, I don't know, fix my hair or do something. And I saw this like hand holding a handkerchief, and it was like translucent, just like literally like a disembodied hand. It sounds like I'm making this up, but it's really what I saw. And it just kind of like floated down with the handkerchief and its like, you know, pointer finger and thumb. And I was like, oh my God. And I freaked out and I ran in the living room and I was like, I just saw this, blah, blah, blah. And then I think like 10 minutes later, my father got a phone call that his aunt died. And I was just like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like, so after that, I was kind of like, God, if you're there, you know what I mean? Like I was so, again, I was questioning everything because I had these experiences, but I'm a very sort of left brain, you know, logical minded person. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe he's there. But honestly, I was that kid that found out Santa Claus wasn't real. And then I was like, well, is God real? Like I totally like went right there.
Yeah.
I know a lot of kids didn't, but I was like, oh, well, if they could lie to me about that, who's to say, you know, like I went totally like in that direction. Which I'm kind of happy about now because I know that I'm not, you know, I don't just believe things blindly. But
yeah.
I prayed that night and I was like, you know, if you're there, please, like, I can't do this. I was like, I'm just a kid, like, I can't do it. And then it went away. It went away for kind of a long time. And ever since, I've gotten things a little bit differently. Like, I won't see things like as if I'm seeing you or something else. I'll get it more in a dream or a feeling, and I'll just know something. Like, that's how it happened after that. But you know, in retrospect, I can't even say that it went away because, like, if you ask any of my friends who I've known since I'm like 15, 16, they'll tell you, like, yeah, you always said weird things that like you shouldn't have known, or you would bring something up and like we didn't understand how you knew it, but you knew it. You know what I mean? Like things like that. So I think my guides or God or whatever, the universe, whatever you want to call it, gave it to me in a way I was more comfortable with because I was supposed to do this work. Because I really think if I was getting it like, you know, Otome and Ghost, I probably wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? I would have been more afraid of it. Yeah, like I couldn't have done all that. So then, you know, it kind of, I had it and I accepted that it was there, and I had weird experiences. And when I went to school for music. That was actually what I love to do. I sang and played piano and stuff. So I went to, love music. Well, you're in music too, right? Aren't you very musical?
I studied it for a long time. Yeah, I studied, I mean, for like probably almost 30 years. Really.
Oh yeah, so you're more than I did.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, from the time I was 11 and well, actually I take that back, about 20 so years. From the time I was about 10 years old, I started singing in choir and also taking private voice lessons, and then it kind of continued, and then I also went to a couple of years of music school and stuff. But my singing voice it's definitely not a pop voice. It's interesting. It's I sing choir and that kind of more classical music, but not solo soprano opera either, which I can do. It's just I'm not great at it. My instrument's very specific, so
your instrument
lends itself to other things, and it lends itself to mantra, chant, decree, and it lends itself to hypnosis and meditation.
Which are all things that I'm sure you use in your daily life now.
Yep.
But yeah, so, you know, I went to school for music, and then when I graduated, obviously, like, I got a music degree, and where was I going with that? Like, I wasn't like someone was just ready to hand me like a microphone and be like, hey, you're going to make all this money because you went to school for music. So I moved home from the city back to Long Island with my parents, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do with myself? I had no job because Hurricane Sandy had just happened, and like, I like wasn't going into the city, whatever. So I started meditating a lot, and I was like, you know, I had this really strange dream. It's kind of a little bit of a long story, but I'll tell it because I feel like it's very important to like the beginning of why I started. I don't know, it was my mother's fault actually that I started doing this, really, because she told me to read this book by John Edward. It's called Infinite Quest. I don't know if anyone's ever read it or if you've ever read it, but it's basically just like everyone has intuition and like here's how to pay attention to it. And it's funny because in the book he basically says like a million times, I shouldn't even say basically, he flat out says, you're probably not a medium. Like, don't start thinking you're a medium by reading this book. Like, this is just so you can tune into your intuition. Not everyone's going to be a medium. Which in the beginning I was like, oh man, like I want to be a medium. Meanwhile, hello. But something kind of like resonated, and I read the book, and I was like, I want to learn more about my own intuition, because I've always had it. It's been this thing that's always been there that I can't escape, and maybe it's time to really tune into it. And I've had been reading tarot cards since I was 10 years old. At the time I was like 23. You know what I mean? Like I was ready for it. So I found the woman who taught John Edward. And she wrote this like 5-book ebook series for psychic development. And I loved the first 3 books were amazing. The last 2 were on mediumship, and it just wasn't like my style. But the first 3 books were just about meditation and your chakras and tuning in and just the basics. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do these. So I bought them, and then I'll never forget it. The day that I bought them, took a little nap. I was like, I'm tired. So I laid down and I took a nap, and I had this really crazy dream that I was trapped inside of an emerald. Like I was stuck inside, and this guy was holding it, and he had like a beard, like he looked like Merlin or like Leonardo da Vinci or something. He gave me more of like a Leonardo da Vinci vibe. He was holding it, and he was laughing at me, and I was so disturbed that I was trapped inside of this gem. And he was just like laughing as if to say, like, you dope, like what are you even afraid of? Like it was almost like as if he had so much more intelligence than I had, and I was afraid of something that I didn't even need to be afraid of. And it was like dread, but he was, and in the dream, I remember being like, this guy's so mean. Like, I'm so scared, and he doesn't care. Like, it doesn't matter that he understands. Like, I don't, I'm nervous, like whatever. I was like having like a moment. So I woke up, and I was like, I'm going to call that guy the alchemist. I don't know where I got that from, but it was just like the name that popped in my head. And that was that. So I kind of kept it in my mind, and I went through the ebook series. And when you get to, I think she recommends like 6 weeks per book. So I really like stuck with it, which is hard for me because I'm an Aries, and I'm like, always skip ahead. I want it done yesterday.
But that doesn't apply to me.
Right. I don't need 6 weeks. What? But I did it. I actually did it. And I was very grateful because the universe really, all of a sudden, everyone remembered that I had a deck of tarot cards. It was without me even telling them I was doing this. It was very strange. I was like, you still read cards? And I was like, yeah. It's very weird. But on the 3rd book, so I guess this was like 3 or 4 months into it, this woman gives you an exercise to meet your guides. So I did my like exercise thing to meet my guides, and I met my guides that I still work with. And then I had this other guide, and he told me he was the alchemist from my dream, and that he was all about getting you started on your spiritual path. And he only comes to people for like a short time when you are beginning to learn about like listening to the universe. And basically said to me, everyone's path is different, but when you start listening and paying attention to the symbolic language of the world and the universe and things like that, I'm there to sort of guide you. And then once you're on the path, I go to someone else. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So now again, I'm very like, I need so much proof. I'm so annoying. Like when I die, my guides are probably going to punch me in the face when I get there, because I'm such a pain in the ass. Like I need everything 3 times in order to believe it. Like I really need, I ask a lot of the universe. So I wanted to take lessons with someone, and I found this woman in this local metaphysical like goods shop. It was like books and all that stuff. It had been open for so long. I knew the owner a little bit, and I this one woman I love so much. Another Scorpio actually. I approached her and I was like, do you teach lessons? Like, I'm kind of drawn to your energy. And she was like, yeah, but she was like, before I teach people, I really like to just like do a reading first and see where you're at and do your astrology. And then if I feel we can work together, we can work together. All right, that's fair enough. So we scheduled a reading, and I went into it, and I said to my guides, I was like, if you guys could just like have her bring up one thing, so I know, that only I would know that you've told me, so that I know that you're really there. Literally the first words out of this woman's mouth were, have you ever read The Alchemist? And I was like, oh my God. First of all, I didn't even know that The Alchemist was a book. I'm sure you know.
I read, yes, book. I love The Alchemist. It's by Paulo Coelho. Everybody.
Yeah, changed my life. Oh my God. If anyone listening hasn't read it, please listen to it, because I swear to God, The Alchemist is a real entity. That book is not just fiction. There's no way.
Remembering it. I have to read it again. And actually, I did a voice project a couple of months ago, voiceover project, where I this company hired me to just read bedtime stories. It's like for a
Hmm.
device, and it puts people to
Right.
it's pretty good
Yeah.
idea, you know. Obviously, it gets meditative, and one of them was a section from The Alchemist, and I was like, oh man, I miss this text
Oh,
so
it's
much.
so good, right? Oh my, amazing. And it's such an easy read. And
Mhm.
if you don't, if you're not paying attention, you could think it's just like a very simple story, but it's so important. I tell everybody that I know to read it because it really is like incredible. I can't even take it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so she said that to me and I was like, what? So I literally could have got up right there and been like, thanks, bye. Like I got exactly what I needed. Like, what are the odds the first thing
What
someone
is
says to you is,
300? Sure, whatever.
right, like wait, right.
I'm
You want to empty
24.
my bank account?
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
Right. I was ready. So then, you know, I took lessons from her for some time, and it's funny actually. I she asked me to do a reading for her because I wanted to learn mediumship, and she was like, I can't teach you anything. She was like, you're already better than I am. And I was like, what? What do you mean? It was so funny. So she taught me like
Not
other
Edward said
things,
I'm
like
not one even.
right. He told me no, you know. So I was very funny. But she taught me like other meditation techniques and essential oils. She taught me so many different things. I'm so grateful to her. But so when I read the book, The Alchemist, I don't want to ruin too much, you know, for anyone who hasn't read it who's listening, but there is the character is not the main character, but the alchemist is a very important character in the story, and he literally said some of the things to the main character that he said to me in my meditation. And the whole purpose of the alchemist is to teach you how to listen to the voice of the world, as they say in the book. And I was just like, how is it that I came up with the name and like
Instruction.
the right, the instructions, and they're in the book. So then I looked up Paulo Coelho and how he wrote it, and he said something like it was the fastest book he's ever written, and it kind of just came out in like one draft and it was done. And
Yeah.
you know, it like was written in like 2 weeks and that was it. And every other book, you know, took longer, and this book has been translated into like 80 different languages. And I was just like, that's because like the alchemist is real. Like
Yeah.
like he's real. I'm telling you, like he's as real as like you would invoke like an archangel or your grandmother who's on the other side. Like on in that non-physical world, I know the alchemist is an entity there. And I have one other quick story about that, and then I'll move on to my actual career. Um, my friend Anna, who I brought up in the beginning, I was meditating one day, and the alchemist said, "Okay, I'm leaving you. I'm going to someone else next." I was like, "Okay, I guess I learned everything I can from you. Now I'm on my own. Like you taught me everything I needed to know." And he was like, "I'm going to go to Anna next," and I was like, "Ah, all right, whatever." So I wrote it down and I dated it. Um, and I was like, "Right, I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to see if she brings it up to me." And do you know she brought it up to me like 2 weeks later? She like
How did she,
had a
did she
she
say,
had
I think the alchemist is with me because you had told her about it, or how did
well she knew about it, but she had a I wish I could if she was here right now because I feel like she'd remember better than I do. But I know she had a dream about like a guy on a roof, and she was really scared of him, but like knew he wasn't bad. And I was like, girl, what? Like I was like, oh my god.
That's
And I think I was like, that sounds familiar. And then I think she said something else, and then I was like, she either said to me like, it reminds me of your dream. She somehow said something to me
Mhm.
like, I'm logical. I gotta wait. Like I'm so annoying. And she said it, and I was like, oh my god, come over right now, because she like lived around the corner. So she came over, and I showed her like I wrote it in like the top corner of the page and like dated it.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, look, he told me he was going to you next, and she was like, oh my god, what? And then she read the book, and it was just like, and it's so funny because she's not a medium today, but she's like on this whole other path. And she's so intuitive, and like I always tell her like, if you wanted to, you could probably put me out of business, like because she's just like anyone who just learns those lessons can just like read energy. You know how to listen and like take cues from your guides and the universe and everything. So you know, very very important book. And lesson. And for anyone else, you know, listening out there, it's not just a story. Like there is some real life, like truth to this. So then after that, I kind of embraced my gifts and was like, okay, I can't, you know, let this go anymore. And then the whole medium thing happened. I had met this medium, Kim Russo. I'm sure everybody knows who she is. She has a TV show. She's fabulous. One of my good friends. She kind of made me read her impromptu at this dinner.
Wait,
I'd never
how
done a
did
medium.
you just said that like, oh, I met Kim
Oh,
Russo.
well, so she actually ended up, I didn't know, but she ended up being friends with my cousin. I didn't know, my cousin's an astrologer, and I
Okay.
didn't know that they were friends.
Hmm.
So my cousin Maria invited me to a dinner,
Hmm.
and my friend Kim ended up being there. We didn't know each other at the time, and she just kind of like turned to me and was like, oh, so they told me you're a medium. Give me a reading. And I was like, what? No, like, I don't do this. I had never done a medium reading before. I'd never talked to a dead person that, intentionally.
Hmm.
So then it, you know, it went well. And then I was like, wow, I guess I do this. And it was so weird. I did one reading.
I guess I do this.
Right. Like, it was just so, like, I was like, oh, okay. And I did it once, and it was like riding a bike. Like, I just haven't stopped since. That was 7 or 8 years ago. And I'm still doing it. And now sort of where I've taken my business, I guess, because in the beginning, it's all about like word of mouth and spreading your, the word. So you have clients, and you sort of have to like establish your business. I'm sure all of us doing this work kind of have to do the same thing. And typically spiritual people aren't that good at it, or like don't love doing it, because we're more about like wanting to help. And it's like, oh, I have to think about like money, and so it was all those lessons in the beginning. But I did get certified through the Forever Family Foundation. There's this group, it's a husband and wife who started it, who unfortunately lost their daughter. And they were basically like agnostic about the whole thing, or maybe even more like skeptical about the whole thing. And they went to a medium, I forget who it was, and it might have been one of the mediums that are on the list of certified mediums now, and it blew them away. And they were like, is this real? Like, how the hell, like they did the whole nine, the fake name. And this was also kind of maybe 10 or 15 years ago, maybe even longer. So it wasn't as easy to Google people as it is now. Not that we Google people, but you know what I mean. They didn't have that sort of like that idea. So they realized that there was some truth to this, and they started reaching out to scientists and other mediums, and they formed this this non-for-profit organization that certifies mediums and has a scientific board of physicists and psychologists and really, really smart people who know that there's more to reality and kind of come at it from a physics point of view, or a it's like psychology, but more like personal psychology, right? Like really, really, really cool people. And they put you mediums through a test. You have to read, I think, 6 people. I think when I did it, it was 6. 1 over the phone, and then 4 over or 5 over like a video chat. And you get scored. Like they rate you on it, and you just kind of like give them whatever, and then really only allowed to say yes or no. Super, super strict. I think you have to get like 75% accuracy or above, like, which is, it sounds like not a lot, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Right. It's a lot.
Even when people are just communicating, humans incarnated face to face, we probably only understand 80% of what the other person.
Right. Right. So it's
75.
Right. Right. That's huge. And honestly, it may even be higher. I never asked them what the percentage is, but I know it's pretty high. And thankfully I passed. I didn't know that a lot of people didn't. And I'm glad no one told me that, because I definitely would have choked and like not done well. So that was my first kind of experience, like being tested. And I kind of loved it, because I was like, wow, like, not even just to say that I'm certified, because most people honestly don't even care about that, which I don't get at all. But for me, I was like, wow, like it's more validating for me to know that like I'm being put to the test here, and I'm actually doing what I'm saying I'm doing, instead of just thinking it's all up here. And then I've worked with different universities. The biggest one is the University of Virginia. The study's not out yet, and because of the COVID-19, it probably won't be out until like next year. I think it was supposed to be done by now, but might be getting pushed a little bit further out, like everything else. So I can't say too much about it, but they basically just we're testing mediums and scanning our brainwaves and stuff, and also for accuracy, they recorded the statements we made, and it wasn't just like in someone's basement. Like they put me in this like special, basically like electromagnetic proof room. So like my phone wouldn't even work at it. Like they eliminated all and every way that we could possibly, cheat if you were going to cheat. And I don't know what the test results are yet, but some very interesting things happened while I was there, which again, I can't really talk about, but maybe I'll come back on and talk about it with you when I can. Yeah, would love that. But now, what'd you say?
What a tease.
Right? I know, I'm teasing you guys. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm sort of trying to bring my career now, is this legitimize it for everybody, because I know so many really, really, really good mediums that I feel like, I know I'm not bad, but I feel like there's so many people that I look at their readings, I'm like, oh my God, like I wish I could do that. And they're like not certified, or honestly, even I use you as an example all the time as a non certified Forever Family medium, because some people are like, oh, well, do I have to choose people on this list? And I'm like, listen, like they're all good, but you can find people who aren't. And I was so impressed with you when we met, because we met we were being put to the test when we met for a TV show thing. And you brought up something about someone that but you couldn't have guessed if you tried. I don't know if you remember.
It's the one thing that I remember, and I actually did talk about it in a class or
Mm-hmm.
something that I was, yeah, it was in a class. And actually a person who was actually one of the people I'm not going to say her name right now, but
Right.
the TV producer who brought us there, she probably wouldn't
Uh-huh.
mind. I just didn't clear it with her.
Right.
She
Yeah.
was in my class, and I was like, "Do you mind if I tell the story?"
Right.
So, is it about the dress?
No,
No, you're recalling something else. So
I'm
tell the
close.
one that you're
It
remembering.
was about this woman who, and I don't mean to sound like I was judging or stereotyping or anything, but she was very like,
Oh, I
she was a
remember.
little
Okay.
bit like rough around the edges,
Yeah.
and very nice. She was very nice.
She had a
But
lot of guard. Oh, wait, no. I'm thinking of a couple of different ones. Actually, before you go on, let me just explain to people.
yeah, yeah.
So, Joe and I were going up for a TV show about mediums, and we were picked from different, we didn't know each other. That's how we met. And they brought us to the first meeting was in New York,
Mhm.
and we had to like cold read or blind, meet these people who were the who were the like the executives of this
Right.
particular
We didn't even know their first names. Like we
yeah,
knew
we know anything
nothing.
about them, this network. And so we had to like just go and read. And we were reading in tandem and kind of going, I love the tandem.
Yeah, it was
It
cool.
was so fun. So go ahead and tell what you're recalling.
So there was this woman who was she didn't seem her energy seemed very, and even her body language was just kind of closed off, and she was nice, but she was very like, I hate to use this word because I hate the whole masculine feminine thing, because like what is gender anyway, like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter who you are, but
Yeah.
she wasn't very like a very overtly like seemed like a very creative person or a very feminine person. And it was so funny because you kept going on and on to her about like the divine feminine and dancing and using your sexuality, and I was like, with this lady really? And I was like, okay, whatever. And then she literally had to leave the meeting early to go to like this
For
like
dance class.
it was like a dance class, but it was like a burlesque.
Burlesque. That's
And I
right.
was like, oh my fucking, I was like, Tricia, are you kidding right now? Like, you would have never, ever, 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 like, there was no way you could look at this woman and know. And I hate to say that because it sounds so like I'm stereotyping, and I don't mean it in that way, but she just wasn't giving off that, like, very, like, burlesque is very sensual. It's very
Yeah.
creative, and it's like bawdy. And
Yeah.
she was like, just didn't show any of that. There was no way you could glean that from her physical appearance or
Yeah.
anything this woman said or did. And it was like the biggest thing you were talking about. And I was
I
like,
forgot about that
I
completely. And
was
not only
so
that,
impressed, so
but she
impressed.
had such a wall up because
She
they were
did
instructed to not give
give
us
us a hard time, basically.
yeah, exactly. Kind of give
Yeah,
us a hard time. And some of them
yeah,
were, open anyway. They'd be like, uh-huh, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like doing the
yeah,
normal
yeah, yeah.
thing people do because they're excited.
Right.
But she was like, mm-hmm, like
Yeah.
everything that I said, and it was like off a wall. So she had this wall up, and I was like,
Right.
I'm bombing, for all I know. But it didn't care. I
Right.
was just
Right.
bringing through what I had. And
Right.
then she was like, okay, well, I have to go. Stood up and said, and just so you know, I'm leaving because I have to go to a burlesque kill. And then she opened up a little bit, and she was
Right.
like,
And then I was like, oh my God, like what? It was one of the most like amazing readings. I swear to God, like I called my mother after, and I was like, Ma, I was like, I met this woman today. You're never gonna believe this. Like I'm still amazed. Like I tell people all the time about it because it was one of my favorite, like, I was shocked. Like, and it wasn't even my
I
reading. I was
completely
like,
forgot
oh my
about that moment.
God. No, it was so amazing. I mean, we all even the other one we were with, that the other medium, I feel like we all had such good, hits,
Mhm.
and I think actually we impressed them. I think very much so.
They
Um,
did. Yeah, the only reason,
yeah,
and if you guys are probably like, when's the show coming out? The only
right.
reason it didn't go forward was because the particular network that we were pitching to or working with kind of like hit the skids right after that. And,
Literally, they like fired like 3 or 4 people that we
yeah,
were. It was like a whole thing.
yeah,
But
so they're
that's
having a hard
TV.
time.
That's
And
showbiz, kids.
yeah, and now that was like last year, late
Right, and
last
now
year, and now all of
nothing's
production is
really.
shut down anyway.
Yeah.
Well, the one story that I was talking about, because I loved it so much because it was a tandem. It was us like both picking up on the
Hmm.
energy. And so there were a couple of points to it. So there's one woman, and you were like picking up on her grandparents. It was like the
Hmm.
grandmother, and you're picking up the grandmother, and you're like, there's this thing, and it's one of those moments where John Edward, you see it a lot with him, and you're like, there's something about a dress, like a custom dress. There's like a dress, and she was like, I
Hmm.
don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
Hmm.
And you were like going on a little bit, and you're like, ah, she's bringing back the dress. There's the dress again. It's like a
Hmm.
custom dress. And she
Hmm.
kept saying, I don't know, I don't know. And you had it grandmother, and it was the mother side. You had that.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I thought I was like I thought this had nothing to do with anything because I
Mm-hmm.
suddenly saw the suit that Jackie Kennedy was
Mm-hmm.
wearing when her husband was assassinated, that coral
Right.
colored Coco Chanel suit. I just had a
Mm-hmm.
flash of that and I was like, okay, I have a flash. And again, this to me is a suit. You're talking about a dress. And I said
Right.
this, and it was that Coco Chanel suit
Mm-hmm.
of the coral color. And she went, yes, it's my
Mm-hmm.
bat mitzvah dress. My
Yes, that's right.
grandmother had it custom made, and she particularly modeled it after that suit and that
Yes, that's
color.
right.
And so
That's
we did,
right.
again, we didn't know. I thought I was taking us on a
Right.
tangent. And then I was like, and I'm hearing Lou, and she goes, that's my grandfather. That's her husband.
Right.
It's
So
like,
we brought it together, right? You
yeah.
know what? I think it's so good too, like when mediums work together, especially because like we have such different views of the world. Like I'm not gonna look. You're a woman. You're older than I am. I'm like
Yes,
have
exactly. So
like
that
the frame
Coco
of
Chanel
reference is.
coral colored suit, you probably don't. Spirit's
I
not
don't
going to
even.
pull it out of your brain, you know?
Ah, that
Yeah.
you know how far back that's buried in my brain. Like that's not. It's not. You know, I'm sure it's not at the front of yours either. But I feel like I don't know. It's just you. You're. I was talking about this on my Instagram live last night because I do those once a week on Monday nights. I do like a little live where I do readings and I give a talk
Oh, so
about
good.
astrology. You know everything going on. Just kind of like prep people and give them messages.
Oh, we should do that
Um,
together. Ooh,
Oh my god, I would love to. You
that
should
would be
come
so
on one.
fun.
Oh my god, yes, I'll have you on a live. Oh my god, we could like do like tag team readings, talk. People would love it.
I love it. Yeah.
We'll set it up definitely. But yeah, I was telling them last night, like even with your own intuition, if you're not a medium, for anyone listening, like you have to check your own filter when you are doing readings. Like we do readings. It's our own sort of language in our head, our own frame of reference. Like if I don't know something, it's going to be very hard for them to have me bring it up because I don't know what the hell I'm even talking about.
Mhm.
Like even sometimes it's hard for me. I know it's going to sound so stupid because like I grew up in New York and there's so many different kinds of people, but like I find the best readings I do are usually for Italian people because like I grew up in an Italian family and like
Mhm.
uh, if you have an Italian grandmother, like we probably had the same upbringing for the most part. So like I can bring up, they can show me stuff from my own life exactly how it was,
Mhm.
and you'll have the same experience. Where like if you grew up and you're Puerto Rican, like you're gonna have a little bit of a different frame of reference because we come from different backgrounds and our grandmothers are, I mean, similar in a lot of ways,
I was going to say,
but
wait, Puerto Rican and Italian, New York.
it's close, right? But that's what I mean. Like, but even that
I get
sometimes
it.
it's a little bit like certain foods or that I
Mhm.
wouldn't know about that my grandmother made meatballs,
Yeah.
your grandmother might have made something else, or so you do have to kind of check your filter. But that's why I actually love reading with other mediums, and most of the time I'm paired up with someone different for me because most mediums are women. I don't know why that's a thing, but most mediums I've met are women who happen to be like a little older than I am.
Mhm.
So I sort of have like whenever I read with other people like a different side, and I love it because I feel like I'm always amazed at the things you guys get because I'm like, oh my god, I never would have even like I don't even know what that
That's how
was or
that's how I feel with you. When you were just like, seriously, the whole time, like, pa, 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 pa. And I was like, am I going to contribute? Also, for me, when I'm tandem
no, you're
reading,
great.
I
Yeah.
rarely feel it while you're pulling it through. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
identifying to what you're pulling through because
Right.
that's just how my energy works.
Right.
As a human design, I'm a reflector, so I just kind of match everything.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
then when
Right.
there's a moment to pause, or I'll even just be prompted to interrupt or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Just say I have something to say, and I don't know what it is. It's just whatever's going to show up.
Right.
There's a
Whatever's
pause. It's
there.
like there's a pause. Okay, and then it's like curl suit,
Right. Right. I don't
which
know
is
what
an
this is, but
interesting thing with the tandem thing for me.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like we also a lot of mediums really don't get a chance to do that very often.
Yeah.
I actually think the mediums from England, like Arthur Finlay, and like
Yeah.
those mediums, I think they do a lot in tandem. Like when they do gallery readings and stuff, I've seen that a lot, which I think is really cool. Um, but I haven't had too many chances to do it. But when I honestly, it's usually because of a TV thing. To be quite honest with you, anytime I've ever gone for a TV thing or done a reading connected to that, it's always with another medium or two, and we kind of get to play that way. But
Mhm.
I happen to love it because it's
It's really
very rare we get to see how like other people work in our own field. It's weirdly it is kind of like a solo profession. Like you don't work in that way with other people often. At least I don't. But I definitely enjoy
Yeah,
doing.
it's like the business model isn't set up that way, but that's why I'm like, yeah, let's do the readings on Instagram Live because it
I would
really
love that.
works to here's the thing. I actually have a guest who I don't know by the time if this show has come out yet or not. So
Hmm.
she was talking about how the Arcturians told her that when, we send love or we bond, whatever, we send love and light,
Hmm.
and it multiplies 1,000 times. And I
Right.
said, it's like if you send love to one person, it multiplies and it goes out to 1,000 people. And I said, is that kind of like, am I being too literal by assuming then if it was like 10 people who got together and connected in love, it's multiplied by 10,000 times? She's like, no, that's what they're saying.
Right.
And so then, like, if you and I come together, we've got a multiplication of 2,000, and then whoever
Right.
else we're working with. So it makes a lot of sense
Spreading
to
a
do it.
lot.
It's just the business
Yeah, we just
modeling hasn't
don't.
supported it.
Yeah, well, maybe we should start a new trend.
You should, yeah.
Working together. I don't know. Sounds crazy, but
Well, we got Zoom now. You can have many people on there, so you can have
yeah,
two
yeah,
two readers on there.
definitely, definitely.
So I want to talk about when you were talking about the precognitive stuff. So you're getting the dreams and it's
Hmm.
predicting people in the 9/11, and I mean prediction is not really the word. You're picking up on it. You're picking up on
Right.
those streams of energy, or if the people are going to pass. And of course, when you're young or when it's fresh to you, like you said, you're like, what do I do with this? And
Right.
so, how do you answer that question, or what is your information around that now?
Um. Hmm. That's a really good question. I mean, so I guess it's kind of, I can answer that in two parts because I feel like with the medium thing, like just connecting with people's loved ones, and
Mhm.
I really feel like that's all about just opening people's hearts and really teaching people like we're more than just this physical body.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that's what I do with that, and I feel like that's the purpose of it. And honestly, believe it or not, I feel like most people might find this surprising, but I had an easier time accepting being a medium than the whole psychic thing because for me, for a long time, I was kind of like, well, the
You mean
hell,
so far as
like
when things are precognitive, they come to you in a
yeah,
vision?
like
Yeah.
right, and like kind of what is okay. So I know about it, so maybe like I can prepare myself, and is this? Sometimes I think it's a self-preservation thing almost because I
Mm.
find that when I'm at my most emotional or when something in my life is going to happen that I feel I don't know yet, but I guess some part of me, whatever part of me that reaches out forward,
Mhm.
will know that I'd feel better kind of having it in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
It's almost like a survival instinct. Like,
You're not quite as shocked, maybe. Yeah.
right, I'm not as
Because
shocked or
you already
I had
started
minutes
working on it.
for, right, exactly.
Mhm.
Even if I don't realize what I'm working on, I'm
Yeah.
working on that. I'm sure you've had this too, where you're feeling something before you even know why you're feeling it
Yeah.
days before. And then you're like, oh, no wonder why I was working on feeling heartbroken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, or
Oh, yeah.
that does happen to me often. But as far as like exact like events, recently, to be honest with you, recently I've been getting them a lot because I think of everything going on in the world, and I'm very, very tuned in to like the collective on purpose. I want to be,
Hmm.
and now I feel like it's so I can inform other people because I really feel like I feel bad for this is gonna sound terrible, but I feel bad for people who aren't like us or who aren't at least working on their intuition or in tune with it because I feel like at this point in history of the world, it's such a valuable asset, and we've been taught for so long that it's not real and it's not there, and to ignore it. And I don't know how coincidental that is, honestly, but that's a whole other conversation. um, I think people need it more and more now than ever because I feel like where we're headed, we're not really going to be, we're going to have to govern ourselves for a period of time. I think where I feel like we're already learning that we have to really trust our instincts, and the higher power, whatever you want to call it, however you want to think about it, is really going to be the only one that can guide you. And so now currently that's really where I'm sort of, I'm feeling like that's a life purpose thing a little bit. Like this is why I've been given this, like now's the time, Joe, you know what I mean? Like the second COVID happened, and honestly even after that, because that kind of in the beginning felt like to me like the opening act, and I couldn't figure out why. And now everything with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything going on, this shakedown that the people are doing with the government, which I am all for, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, Now I feel like okay, like this is it. Like this is why I was given this gift in this way, and not so much the mediumship thing, but the psychic thing, and
Mm.
being able to tune in and get messages about the collective or the world or the universe.
Yeah.
I really think that's what I'm supposed to do with it, and I think all of us really are supposed to do it. It's
Hmm.
it's to really to help people and to reach out, and I think it's sort of maybe the ego talking in the beginning when you're like, well, I can't stop this, and why am I getting it if I can't? It's such an ego thing, I
It's an
think.
ego thing, and it's also kind of thinking of things very linearly, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And
right,
also judgmentally, even conditionally thinking, well,
right,
it's a bad thing that happened, which of
right.
course, from a certain perspective, it is
It
bad.
is,
That, that,
right.
that doesn't negate the fact that from a higher perspective,
There's a
all is
reason,
moving
right.
to healing no matter what. Well, that's our episode. Be sure to check out all of Joe's links in the description of this either podcast or YouTube description. And especially, I think the Instagram, because if you follow Joe on Instagram, you'll be able to know when he's going to be offering the different things he's offering, including those live streams, which I guess he and I are going to be doing really soon. Going to be super fun. So that's this episode. I really appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.